Just check out a little bit here before we start. How many of you have used tools like YSlow and PageSpeed to test the performance of a website? A few of you. Great. Yeah. So, the talk today is the web performance testing toolbox. And I'm Tobias Jalland from Aftonbladet. And you might wonder what can possibly some guy from Aftonbladet know about web performance. And that's kind of the reason that I care so much. It's because it's really hard to do on a page like this. Aftonbladet, if you're not Swedish, how many are not from Sweden in here? Yeah, if you're not Swedish, you might not know that Aftonbladet is probably the most successful news website in the world. We have 3 million daily visitors to our mobile and website. And it's also, it's the largest website in Sweden officially, when you don't count YouTube, Facebook, and Google. And it's also the poster child of the Scandinavian style of news websites, which means a lot of content and really long pages and a lot of ads. Yeah, really long pages. So trying to optimize this is pretty hard. It's way harder than doing something like the Google front page. So anyway, I checked just before here how many that have used tools like YSlow and PageSpeed to test the website. They're like general tools that will give you advice on the best practices and so on for what you need to do to get your website to load fast. And there are also books. These books from Steve Souders are great starts to when you get into web performance. I'm not going to talk about that today. I will give you a link at the end to know more about that. Because what I'm going to talk about are the tools. When you've done all this, when you have gotten all the scripts to the bottom and all the CSS in the top and nothing that blocks, and the website is still slow, what are the tools that you can use to test it out and to understand how it behaves? So web performance is actually about two things. It's about getting stuff to load as fast as possible and to render as fast as possible, and to maintain a responsive UI. And that's not responsive in the responsive design way, but a responsive that it doesn't freeze and it's fast and so on. So the first part, which is where most of these tools are, is in the loading and rendering part. And the loading and rendering is all about getting a nice waterfall view of the page. Waterfall in this case are the things that you will find in this is Chrome, the Chrome DEVTOOLS. Timeline view, there are certain in Firefox and in IE too, in Safari and so on. That you can get a nice timeline over the networking that goes on. We're going to look at another tool that's not integrated into the browser, but an external website called WebPagetest. I will also give you a link in the end to a page where you can get all these tools. WebPagetest is a website that helps you test how something loads in a lot of different browsers and in different places in the world. Basically, what you do is you choose from where you want to test this out. Here are all the resources involved, where there are agents to do that. You choose which browser you want. That depends on where in the world you want to load it from. We're in Sweden. There's a node in Stockholm that you can use. Use Chrome and the network speed of a cable connection. And you can also capture a video and so on of how the page loads. So add the JFocus front page to the queue and click Start the test. This was done, I recorded this on Sunday. That's why it's so fast. It usually can take a minute or so before you have done through the queue. We'll just move on. When it's rendered and complete, you will get this waterfall view and also a film strip view and video of how it loads. And when you click on the detail page, here is all the resources loading. Oh, that's the red one there. This is the connection view of how things are, of how the connections to all servers are handled, and also detailed information about all the resources and so on. So to be able to understand this, you have to know some things about these waterfall views. First, every resource goes through some phases. You have the green one there at the beginning, or is it green? Something. That's the DNS time. That should be as short as possible, and you should have as few as possible of these. Unfortunately, DNS can be quite a bottleneck. So you make sure that's short and have long DNS cache times. The next one is the connection view. The handshake that the server and the client does to set up a connection. That should also be short, and you should really have as few as possible of these. In order that you can enable, make sure that you have keep alive enabled on the servers and so on. The green one, that's the time to first byte. That's the time it takes before the client receives something from the server. So if you're Java developers and you see something like this, you should be happy, because that's a server problem, and we all know how to handle server problems, right? It's the client that's the tricky part. And the blue one is the download time. It's mostly about network speed. And there are certain problems on these pages that you can detect right away. You do not want a waterfall that looks like this. You want it steep and short. And when you get this kind of stair thing, where one resource loads and nothing else, and then when it's finished, the next one starts, and then the next one, and so on. You don't use the network as good as you would like, and you're probably blocking the rendering of the page too. This is a typical old school ad example, and it's, in fact, it is an ad, where a script with a source loads and uses document write to output another script source tag that uses document write to output another script source tag. This was okay in 2001, and they're still doing it. In the connection view, you want to utilize your open connections as much as possible. These are two pictures of how images loads onto different sites. Where on the one on top, you can see they load a few and then wait for several seconds before the rest is loaded. This is typical of, and in fact, it is responsive design sites. If we're getting image sizes correct, and so on, is tricky. And you get in conflict with what the prefetching parts of the browser can do, and so on. The one on the bottom is another responsive website. It's the one that I made, and that's why it's looking so much better. So just a quick look at that web page test result for the JFocus page. It's actually not that bad. You can see it's a steep waterfall. It loads a lot of images. Probably you could sprite some of these images to get it a little shorter, but it's not horrible. And something interesting is the repeat view. The first view is with an empty cache, and then you load it again with a prime cache. And in that case, you really want to have it as short as this. This is pretty good, actually. Unfortunately, this is in Chrome. And if you load it in IE8, it's all yellow and so much longer. And if we zoom in on something like this, oh, it's completely unreadable. If we click on it and zoom in, you can see that it's all 3 or 4s, which means not modified request. So the server does not send out any caching headers. So it's just up to the browser to cache the images. And IE actually does the right thing here. Okay, I don't know if it has changed. Has it changed? No, it hasn't. So you get all these requests that are just for nothing. Not changed, not changed, not changed. And you want to avoid that, of course. Just setting the correct caching headers is the thing to do here. There are other things that you can do with WebPagetest 2. I'm just going to go through a few of them. Blocking. Blocking requests is really nice if you want to see how the page load, like how the Aftonbladet front page loads when you have an ad blocker on. It's actually not that different from when you have it on. And you can block certain requests, like if you don't want the Facebook plugins or the Twitter plugins, and see what effect they have. You can try to load it with them and without them. You can also script your tests, which are really good for like responsive websites where you want to know that when you load it in a mobile-sized view, you do not want to load this web font at all for the body text, because that's stupid to do on mobile. And you can make sure that that's not requested. And especially looking for requests that are made for things that won't show up on the page at all. They just wasted bandwidth. And especially on mobile, people are actually paying for that. So here are some things that you can script. Set viewport size, I just mentioned. You can set a DOM element, like in this case the FB root element, which is the one that Facebook will add if it's not already on the page when you include their plugins. Or you can block stuff. You can also set another user agent. That's a nice thing if you want to fake a mobile device and so on. As I showed you earlier, you can get a timeline view of a page. This is, right now I'm working on rewriting the mobile website for Aftonbladet. So therefore it's nice to know how the new website compares to the old one. So the new on top, old one at the bottom. So at least we're doing something right now. And you can get it to show every 500 milliseconds or one picture at a second or tenth of a second. You can also get a video, and that's really good for comparing sites. So the new website and the old one. We're launching pretty soon too, so don't despair. The old one was actually made in like 2007 and hasn't changed much since then. So, and I had nothing to do with that too. Also, there's an API, of course. That's a RESTful API that you can use to integrate this into your continuous integration service and so on. You probably want to do a local installation. If you want to use the public one, you have to email Patrick Meenan, who's behind this. He now works at Google, and describe why you deserve a public key. So what you really want to do is to install this on your own service somewhere. You can still keep agents that are ready-made images for the Amazon EC2 and once you've done that, it's really easy to integrate into your monitoring and your continuous integration, just making sure that your website will not get slower. That's Node.js module too. So just npm install WebPagetest -g, and you have a nice command line interface to your WebPagetest server. I really encourage you to do that. Otherwise, you can also use some websites that do it for you, like the g2metrics.com that will monitor your website like once an hour or so, and you get these timelines of what it's changed over time. When you do monitoring like this, it's called the synthetic monitoring because we will load up browsers in the control environment and script them to load the page. And that's really a nice thing to have because you can compare it over time and you know the circumstances when the load. This should be used together with real user monitoring, where you're monitoring the page load times of your real users. And actually, in modern browsers, started with IE, they're really into this navigation timing API, which is a JavaScript API that will help you to time a lot of different things. Here's a picture from the spec about all the things, all the events that will goes into this. And the nice thing is it starts even when you click on the link on that other website somewhere that you don't control. So these are the real load times you get out of this. It's everywhere but in Safari and not in Opera. Does anyone use a real user monitoring tool? No one. Does anyone use Google Analytics? Then you are using a real user monitoring tool. It has this little, just go down there and you get a site speed view of the page that tracks the average load time and all these other metrics too, or at least some of them. Unfortunately, averages when it comes to real users, that's a measurement that's pretty useless actually, because the outliers, it's like the ones using Tele2 on a mobile connection, where it takes forever to load. And if you have a load time of like a few seconds on your page, and suddenly a user where it takes 2 minutes to load up, it could be on an airplane, and on airplanes you could actually get load times of like 20 minutes. That will just shatter your statistics. You can do things like filtering in Google Analytics to avoid counting on them. But that's actually a nice view here too. If you zoom in and forget the Explorer view, that's the default one, and use the distribution, you can see the distribution. And while the average time until in this case, the DOM content loaded event, it's 3.23 seconds. Almost everyone is faster. And use these timings and compare them with what your synthetic monitoring does. And you know what, okay, my synthetic monitoring says that the load time of the page has increased from 2 to 3 seconds. For real user, that means that it has increased from 4 to 6 seconds or something. And that's bad. There are a lot of other tools that are specialized for doing this. Here are a few. New Relic, if you might be using for monitoring your server, they have a real user monitoring tool too, part of the stack. Pingdom is a Swedish company. They launch real user monitoring in beta just right now. There are others. Torbit has a free option that you can use. Or you can do it yourself. Boomerang, one originally from Yahoo, is a tool. It's a JavaScript library that can integrate and send the beacons to your local server. And then you can get it into your own monitoring tools, right down to a Graphite server or something. Well then, the main things that will block rendering and loading of resources, that's scripts, CSSs, and other kind of resources. Actually, we're in a quite good position now because we have the HTML5 spec that actually details how the browser should render the page and how it should load the page and what resources will block other things. You know, if you have a CSS that loads on the page and later you have a script, you can't execute that script until the CSS has finished because the script can do certain things like check sizes of elements. And when you have a script somewhere, it will block things like iframes to load later because you don't know if this iframe should load, and that could be an important part of whether it loads or not, an important part of the user experience. It will try to fetch images if it can find them, and a lot of these things. But I encourage you to actually read the HTML5 spec on how things are loaded in the browser, because it's really interesting. So the critical path is a part of PageSpeed Online. It's a Google tool. it's quite alpha quality, I would say, but it shows the part of the waterfall that actually blocks things. So we load the old mobile website at Aftonbladet. Wait a lot, and you will get the critical path explorer. It's the first on the top. Here are the normal page speed recommendation. You should specify a cache validated for something. And you click the highlight critical path here, and then it removes everything that's not in the blocking part of the page load. So we zoom in on it a little bit, and you can see there are lots of scripts loading in the beginning. They're not that problematic because they are allowed to load in parallel. So the one that takes the longest time to load will be the one that decides when the other are okay. We should probably just squeeze them together to one request. And they should probably not at all be in the header part of the page. But later on you can see here, down here, there's that add again. The typical stare, a blocking script that loads a blocking script, that loads a blocking script, and that loads a blocking script, and there's nothing anyone can do at the time. 2001, yeah. Just to compare, this is our new mobile website, and it has a critical path that looks like this. It's the CSS. And as long as you don't inline the CSS, that's always going to be in the blocking part. There are also some scripts in the bottom. And as we can see that they're in the bottom, and the browser can load them in parallel, we really like to keep them as this kind of blocking scripts because that will actually be faster than the alternative. So this means that for the page to show up, all we have to load is the page and the CSS, and nothing else. And the CSS will hopefully be cached. So these things that are in the critical path, they're like single point of failures. If something there is slow, has problem to load, you will block the entire page. And the really problematic thing here is if these are resources that you do not control yourself, like third-party widgets and so on, ads. Fortunately, Patrick Meenan, the same guy that runs WebPagetest here, he set up a little Chrome extension called SPOF that helps you detect these front-end single point of failures, and especially the third-party ones that you don't control yourself. So looking at the JFocus front page, it's actually quite easy to guess what's included as in this way. There's the Facebook like button with a blocking script, the selected part there. A script source tag that's included directly in the original source of the page will always block. Fortunately, Facebook has, at last, they understand that this is important. So their examples now always uses non-blocking async scripts. Also, Twitter is integrated in this way here too. So the Twitter JavaScript and the Twitter CSS is also blocking the page. So if we run the SPOF-O-matic here, It's this is extension. You just enable it. You clear the browser cache and reload the page. And the right part of the page does not show up at all because it's blocked by the Facebook script. Yeah, sure. Facebook and Twitter, they use Akamai to deliver these scripts and so on. But you don't control Akamai either. So you can't be sure that they actually work. And regardless, these kind of blocking scripts will always mess with the rendering of the page. So avoid them. What it does is it actually reroutes these requests to a server that takes like a minute to respond and then responds with an empty response. So still not loaded. We'll fast forward a bit more. A bit more. And there, you have it. And at last the footer loads, where all the JFocus partners logs are. And of course, when the page is blocked by some external thing and these partners don't show up on the front page, they get angry. Well, you can also do this inside WebPagetest. There's a SPOF tab where you just can add hosts that will fail. And you can get a nice video of how the site behaves when resources don't load. This is actually really powerful to show to managers and so on if you want to explain why this performance stuff is important. So that's kind of the loading and rendering part. We are now going to look at how to maintain a responsive UI and the tools that you can use to do that. And there's this little hidden gem called Dynatrace Ajax Edition. Has anyone used that? A few. I'm so surprised that so few know about this, because it's a wonderful tool that actually traces how the browser behaves. And not any browser, this is Internet Explorer. So you can actually get a really, really good view of how Internet Explorer, and it's not just Internet Explorer 9 or 10, you can get it all down to Internet Explorer 6. If you pay an unknown amount of money, because they're all only in the free edition, they only let you work with the latest ones. Or you can do like me and never upgrade. I have a really old one that works in IE6 and a little newer one that works in IE8. And unfortunately, I looked at the web page today, and it looks like the latest version does. And it looks like the latest version does not work with IE8. Anyway, so what you do is you load it up, and you work in the browser. Like load the speakers page of the JFocus website. Has anyone tried to do that and noticed some problem? Yeah, and now the tool freezes. That's actually because it's made in Java. I'm a Java developer too. Okay. Windows XP and IE8. Wonderful. So we load the JFocus speaker page. It has a real problem that once the page loads, it will freeze for a few seconds, depending on your browser and your configuration, before it works again. And Dynatrace stores all your results that you don't delete. So you can go back to them. This is the recorded one. And you can see here the JavaScript. Is it visible? Can you see okay? Yeah. There's a lot of JavaScript going on here. There are weird things happening with these requests here. This is the Facebook request. It's a single one that goes on for like server 5.49 seconds before it answers. This is a static resource. And that doesn't happen in this case. So it's something else that happens that actually blocks this request while it's going on. So the browser freezes for several seconds. The easiest way is to look down into the hotspots area. This is tracing going on. And you can see that the hotspot is JavaScript parsing. That should not be the hotspot of rendering a page. Then it's rendering. And then you get some JavaScript here that takes seconds to execute. We'll drill down into this. And you can see the back traces here that this was called. Here is the source of the JavaScript. And it's create an iframe. It's actually run 71 times. That's kind of like the amount of speakers on JFocus that has Twitter accounts, right? And you can see that this it's called by the Twitter follow button that's on this page. So digging down into this, remember this is IE. It's that browser that's totally hidden from you in all the IE versions. And you can get down to this level and see how the things are called many times, how long it takes, and whether it blocks it. It has also the ordinary network. Where is it? The network, this time chart, they call it. It's the waterfall view. And it gives you a performance report with some recommendations too. But that's just like what Wiselo and PageSpeed already does. So you can see when something like this happens, there's a problem. So it's the Twitter follow buttons that break the page. Kind of ironic that there's how to scale things. You talk with Twitter going on at the same time. Actually, Twitter acknowledged this. So in the documentation, is there a limit to the number of follow buttons I can add per page? If the number of follow buttons on the same page gets overwhelming, we recommend that you switch to the follow and mini profile intent. So it's basically, yeah, we don't scale. Unfortunately, a lot of these third-party vendors that want you to integrate their widgets, they do it like this. Okay, it works on my machine. It works in the easy scenario. In this case, Twitter knows there are 71 buttons on this page. And the JavaScript should know that this will block the page. And it will freeze. So they really should handle it themselves. But they don't. The other tool to look at here is Chrome, DEVTOOLS. Preferably the canary version of Chrome, because they're actively working on these things, so this is much better in Chrome. The timeline view here, has recently gotten frames view that allows you to look at how it behaves. This is the same page that loads. How it behaves regarding the refresh rate of your average monitor. I mean, monitors today work on a 60 hertz frame rate, which means that you have 16 milliseconds, around 16 milliseconds to do things between every refresh. And you really do want to keep it responsive and keep within these second milliseconds. I mean, this is second milliseconds on all computers, so not this fast one, but the slow one that people actually use. So you record the timeline view here of loading the page and then scrolling up and down. And we can save it and reopen it later, which I've done in this Chrome Canary view. And we can see here when the loading timeline of a frame of 2.99 seconds. That's bad. 3.49 seconds. That's not 16 milliseconds. And all these things are going on during that time. And it's actually, when I'm looking at this, there are some plugins that I have in Chrome that messes with it too. So you should actually always use the plugin-free incognito mode when doing this. And even later on the page, where it has loaded, we can see that it doesn't keep up with a 16 millisecond frame. Unfortunately, these white parts are things that you can't get at through this tool. That's why when Chrome demos this, they use something like this. It's a nice animation that does weird things. In this case, it calls JavaScript methods that forces the page to relay out. And then they remove it and everything looks good. Unfortunately, not all pages are as easy to diagnose as this one. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is how to do all this on actual mobile devices. Fortunately, there's WebPagetest. If you run it from Dull, which is just outside Washington, you can run it on actual mobile devices. There's also the MobiTest, mobitest.akamai.com. They bought the company Blaze that had this, that will do WebPagetest on a mobile device. It's not as complete, but you get the waterfall. If you're using iOS 6, you have to just set up your device as a development device in Xcode, and then you get the network link conditioner. I mean, these things are on desktops too. There's a OS 10 version. If you're on Windows, you use Fiddler to do this. That can fake an edge connection. So when I'm developing on my local network where everything is fast and happy, I can still have it behave as if it's a real user. And there's remote debugging. And if you were developing for mobile just a year or 2 years ago, you will start crying when you see this. Because on Chrome, on Android, and this is only Chrome, not the Android stock browser, there you're on your own, just enable you go down into the settings, enable USB web debugging. And below that is the learn more about using USB web debugging, which is actually a link to the page that describes this, how to do it. Basically, you install the SDK, the Android SDK, and you run this little one-liner, EDB forward TCP 9, blah, blah. It's on that page. And then you just go to localhost. And we actually get the inspectable pages on this device. And it loads up. And I've loaded the Aftonbladet mobile site, you can all see. And we actually get the complete DEVTOOLS. It even has this timeline view. And if you're running the Chrome beta, it has the frames view too. So it's absolutely wonderful. It's just what you need. And if you're running on iOS, there's like the same thing on iOS 6 Safari. You set it up, and then you use Safari on your desktop to debug. And also, if you upload your own apps through Xcode, this can be used to debug web views inside apps. So if you're doing some kind of hybrid app with a web view inside of it, you can actually debug that through the web inspector. Unfortunately, the Safari web inspector is not as good as the Chrome one, but it does exist. So just remember this little short and easy to memorize web page, and you have everything you need to know. So then again, these are all the things that I talked about. And I've also made a little page on our development blog at Aftonbladet with all these resources, and also the one thing that you do not want to miss if you're into web performance. It's this wonderful compilation of 22 links every developer should read. And every developer, I mean, actually every developer should read this. So take the next week off and just web performance. I understand if you're not Swedish, this URL might be a little hard for you, so I will tweet it afterwards. Just follow me on Twitter. I think that we 2 minutes left, according to me, and then there's lunch, so we have the whole hour if anyone has questions.
I think, if I remember correctly, you said we could set up our own web test. One of the tools you could set up yourself.
Yeah.
And that was the same one that could, if you use the DEBUGGING node, you could use for mobile testing. It's the same tool. My question is, can I set up mobile testing on my own site?
Can I set up a mobile testing on my own site, was the question, through WebPagetest? I think you can, actually. I'm not really certain. These tests are done through special apps with a web view on it. I'm actually not certain if they have published them or not. Just go to the WebPagetest forum and ask, and you will get a great answer. As you understand, I haven't done that myself.
How do you handle web performance when you have authentication required on pages, like member area or something like that?
Yeah, performance testing on like member areas and restricted things. Yeah, that's harder. You can script WebPagetest to fill out a form and load several pages after each other, and so on. So that will help, probably. If you do your own installations, it also might be easier to bypass some of these things. But you can get the scripting part of WebPagetest. You can get it to insert the username and password here, and submit, and then load the page and measure that one. And it will. There's a checkbox to discard this because it contains sensitive information, and then it will not be stored. I would not recommend that anyway on a public website to use that. So if you want to do that, get your own.